Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network on this Thursday, May 22nd. Excuse me, had a little tickle in my throat there, but just talked a little bit about Big Ten, SEC, who's on top, kind of up for debate right now. I'm leaning Big Ten, but SEC certainly has an argument here. Gonna switch gears. We're gonna talk a little bit about some matchups that I think you're gonna have to watch this upcoming year. I want to start by going towards the end of the season. Who doesn't love some good old, clean, old-fashioned hate in Georgia Tech, Georgia? This is going to be an awesome game. Last year, you remember this matchup, really, really entertaining. 8 overtimes. Georgia eventually fends off Georgia Tech, who was incredibly feisty, a team that really should have won that game. But this is going to be a good one. Georgia's won 7 straight meetings against their in-state rival, but the Yellow Jackets, they've been kind of closing the gap, especially under head coach Brent Key during his tenure. They've slowly built that program up to where Georgia Tech is again respectable. They're no longer a walkover. I'm sorry, 1 second. Oh man, that's much better. Had to clear my throat for a second. Sorry about that, everybody, but it's allergy season. You know how it goes. So back to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, they've been closing the gap. During Brent Key's tenure, they keep inching closer and closer, and I think last year's Georgia game really showcased that. They came out, they played with a ton of confidence. They were not scared of the moment whatsoever. And this was in Athens. It was a road game for Georgia Tech, a night game, a primetime matchup in which Georgia Tech really showed up. They showed that they were there to play. They weren't there to mess around. Yes, they did end up losing in the end. However, the fight, the drive, the competitive spirit that they showed in that matchup means that I think they're going to really, really, really want this one this year in that clean, old-fashioned hate game, in that matchup. It's going to be interesting. I think Georgia Tech is really itching for a win, for a get-back at Georgia. They don't want to be the little brother anymore. They want to showcase what they can do. Haynes King is back at quarterback. You have a couple other guys. You still have your running back there. It's going to be interesting. You do lose Eric Singleton Jr., which that's a big factor at wide receiver, going to Auburn now. But Georgia Tech's still got a lot of players. Their confidence is at sky high right now, I think. And if they're able to kind of carry that mindset over from that Georgia game last year into this upcoming season, this is a Georgia Tech team that could scare a lot of opponents. And I'm really excited to see how they come out. Do they kind of have that fire in the last week of the season, in rivalry week? Will they be able to finally get past the Bulldogs and get back to kind of where they were at one point? It's going to be a great matchup. I think it's going to be really intriguing. Another matchup with one SEC team in it is Texas A&M at Notre Dame. This is going to happen September 13th, so a couple weeks into the season. It's going to be an interesting one. Mike Elko and the Aggies, they're going to have vengeance on the brain. They're going to come in, look at Touchdown Jesus, and say, hey, I want to go home with this win. We'll see if Notre Dame can do that. We'll let them do that, though. Notre Dame, obviously, this was a matchup that opened the season last year at Kyle Field. Notre Dame really winning a really tight battle between them and the Aggies. Texas A&M is going to want their get back this year. Notre Dame kind of used that victory too last year in the season opener as a foundation to kind of say, hey, we can actually do this. We can compete with SEC programs. We can go into one of the biggest stadiums in the country in Kyle Field in a primetime matchup and win in those kind of places. They kind of use that as the launching point for their eventual run to the national championship. This time, though, it's going to be a little different. They're going to be without Riley Leonard at quarterback. It's probably going to be C.J. Carr, Kenny Minchney, still in competition there. And Texas A&M, they kind of had some really intriguing portal pickups. wide receivers especially, bringing in Casey Concepcion from North Carolina State, as well as Mario Craver from Mississippi State. I think Mario Craver is a guy that's kind of getting overlooked right now, kind of got lost in the shuffle of a really bad Mississippi State team. But that's a guy that's got a ton of talent at wide receiver. Texas A&M is going to want this game back. They lost at home last year. They got embarrassed in the season opener, and that kind of derailed their season. Yes, they still were ranked throughout the season, but starting 0-1 just isn't a great look, especially in the SEC. Texas A&M, they're going to want to win this game in South Bend. I don't know if Notre Dame's going to let them. I think it's going to be a really intriguing matchup. It's going to be a hard-nosed battle. I think it's probably going to be similar to last year's game where it was kind of low scoring, but it was tight throughout the entire game. It's going to be a good matchup. It's going to be one to watch. But Texas A&M, they're going to try to come back and get that win in South Bend, Indiana. Another kind of intriguing matchup on the flip side is Michigan at Oklahoma. Now, this is going to happen September 6th, right? So right at the start of the season, pretty much. And it's intriguing for a couple of different reasons. Oklahoma really struggled last year in SEC play, have struggled under head coach Brent Venables for the past few seasons. Michigan had that really weird season last year. They were pretty much 500 and then beat Ohio State in Columbus. And then the last time we saw them play an SEC opponent, it was in the ReliaQuest Bowl when they shocked Alabama. When I saw the score of that game, I was like, what? How did Michigan beat Alabama last year? But they did. And this is something that they are certainly going to look to do again, is go and beat an SEC opponent. It's going to be interesting. Oklahoma's going to need this win badly, especially if they want to compete in the SEC, if they want to have a successful season. If Brent Venables wants to keep his job, frankly, he's got to win this game against Michigan. Michigan, then, on the other side of it, they get a shot at going on the road, beating a big-time SEC opponent. They have a chance to spoil the 50th anniversary of Oklahoma's national championship team then that year, which actually, incidentally, was the last time that Michigan and Oklahoma met on the football field, was 50 years ago then. You can spoil that celebration if you're the Wolverines. This is a talented Michigan team that I think is going to bounce back. They're going to carry that confidence from the end of last season into this year. Quarterback's going to be interesting. Will it be Bryce Underwood? Will it be Mikey Keene? Not really sure. But Michigan going into Oklahoma, going to be a good one. I think that's going to be a matchup that could determine the way that both of those programs' seasons go. If Michigan gets the win, they have some confidence going into Big Ten play where they can probably pull out a couple more wins than maybe they're projected right now. Oklahoma gets the win. That kind of gives them a buffer going into SEC play, and maybe they lose a game in SEC, but this Michigan game counts back up for that. Certainly very possible. Another kind of rivalry I think is going to be interesting is Florida-Miami. Now, Florida-Miami is going to be September 20th. Last time we saw them, Miami clobbered Florida on the road, 41-17 in Gainesville in the Swamp last year. But then Florida really finished the season a lot stronger. DJ Lagway's coming back. This should be a really talented offense. You have Jake Slaughter kind of anchoring that offensive line. But then Miami also getting Carson Beck in at quarterback. He went 2-0 against Florida when he suited up for Georgia, which is an interesting little side note there. But Florida's going to want this comeback. They got embarrassed, frankly, last season at home. This is certainly a winnable matchup for the Gators, too. They're a much more talented program than people give them credit for. Their losses last season were all pretty much against top 25 opponents. And they have a guy at quarterback in DJ Lagway who's getting some dark horse Heisman potential kind of vibes. Going to be a good one. I think Florida is going to make this much closer. I honestly think Florida probably wins this matchup here, but it's not going to be 41-17. It's going to be much tighter than it was last year, a game that we're really going to have to keep an eye on. And then another rivalry game that I just want to touch on for a second. There's actually two Clemson games. So Clemson, South Carolina, last week of the season, rivalry week. South Carolina won that in an upset last year in the Palmetto Bowl. Clemson's going to want that back. Clemson is really talented this year, one of the best teams in the country in terms of returning production, third-year starter at quarterback in Cade Klubnik, and then they also have a really intriguing opener against LSU. So you start against LSU, you finish with South Carolina. Those are two big-time matchups against SEC programs that I think are really going to kind of determine how Clemson's season will go. If they beat LSU, I think they carry that throughout the regular season, maybe potentially into the South Carolina game. But if they falter week 1, LSU wins, I think it gives them a little shakier prospects for the season. Those two matchups, though, are going to be huge. I think that Clemson is going to be really interesting. The Palmetto Bowl, especially after kind of what happened last year with Lenore Sellers running for 150 yards. They're going to want to shut that down. They're going to want to get that back. Clemson's going to have a couple of really big-time matchups this year that you're going to want to tune into and watch on your television at home. So right now, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk some quarterbacks. But we're going to dive into all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.